Welcome to Ill-Equipped History, where two best friends tell you about a crazy event from history.
Crazy!
Crazy!
You said it like a cartoon.
Gotta pull them in somehow. I'm Morgan, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host and best friend, Emily.
Hey, y'all!
How's it going?
That sound was accompanied by my rocking back and forth like an insane person.
Yes.
I am fine. I'm fine. I'm going to say fine because if I say it enough, it will come true.
Yes. It's positive affirmations, right?
Yes. Yeah, by the time we have so much going on. By the time this episode comes out, we will have done our very first live performance.
Ooh,
and it's a teeny tiny little local thing. I'm horrified. I'm so scared because I'm so scatterbrained that I'm like, there's so much to do.
Have to reach deep down into this college presentation days.
We're going to have to reach deeper than that.
It will be fine, Emily. Nothing to worry about, Emily.
Yeah, this episode is coming out after, so everything went well. It's all fine.
We got a standing ovation.
We made an A. Just imagine everyone's... Oh, don't do that. Don't imagine everyone's naked. These are people from our hometown.
Yeah, let's not do that, please. I would rather not.
So, yeah, we have a lot to put together. You're coming in either Friday night or early Saturday morning, and I'm assuming we will spend Saturday finalizing prep.
Yes, and then
yes.
Sunday is our presentation, and then I'm coming in as of recording tomorrow again because we're doing our annual trip.
Yeah! You get to see me 2 weekends in a row, and you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm so happy.
I can't wait. I need to figure out what the hell is happening with sleeping accommodations.
I was going to ask you that. Not now. Not on the pod.
Yes, not on the pod. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Because we need to. Oh, my God.
Yes.
Yes. So... We should get into it today, right?
We should. Do you know what we're talking about, Emily?
Not a clue.
You will very soon. And listener, by the title, you already know. So let's see how Emily reacts to finding out what our skit is about today.
Oh my God.
October 22nd, 1962. A typical American family has just finished lunch and is enjoying a board game together, with the TV playing in the background. An alert suddenly comes on the television. President Kennedy is giving a nationwide address. The family goes silent as he begins to describe the situation.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation.
Mommy, did he say missiles? What are missiles?
Can be none other than
well, dear, they're like rockets.
the Western Hemisphere.
He said at Cuba, right? That's pretty close, right?
Yes. Children, why don't you go play outside? Dad, we're still playing the game. We'll finish playing the game in a minute.
I want to finish watching the president. Tell you what, you both go outside. and we'll tell you what the president said when he's finished. We'll talk about it as a family, then we'll finish the game.
The children begrudgingly go outside while the parents turn their full attention to the TV screen.
Capable of carrying a nuclear warhead.
Wife and husband clutch each other as they begin to understand the gravity of the situation. Nuclear war is on the horizon.
The Cuban Missile Crisis!
The Cuban Missile Crisis!
I'm having a Cuban Missile Crisis right now. Oh my God. Look, guys, this totally came out of left field for me. I had no idea.
I love surprising you because you always get the best reactions and it makes me so happy.
Oh my God, let's do it. I've literally, my whole, obviously they give you Cliff Note versions in like the 5th grade of what happened.
Barely.
And they just, because there's so much history to teach about it and it's ongoing,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
We breeze over things like this. So like, I know about it. I know Fidel Castro, and that's, there were missiles, there were threats, and that's it. Do I know why it started, how it ended, what the details are? No. So I'm very excited about this.
Yay, I'm so happy. And the fact that you know about how Fidel Castro is involved, I think already starts a good foundation because I
good.
didn't even make that connection. I was just like, Soviet Union, US, there were missiles. We didn't all die.
We didn't know. Everyone was calling each other's bluff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
But we did not all die in a nuclear holocaust. So that is the positive
That's nice.
from this. So as always, to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, we need to go back to what led up to it. So we're going to talk very, very briefly about the Cold War, because this happened in the middle of the Cold War, which lasted from 1945 to 1991. Again, I'm giving the barely Cliff Notes version of the Cold War because it is 50 years. We don't have time.
No.
So it began after World War II. The U.S. and the Soviet Union were the major players in the Cold War. It was primarily between them. Britannica.com. Golly. Britannica.com.
Have some qualms about telling you the information.
Oh my God.
Y'all, it's fine. We're not struggling. Remember, we're manifesting good things. We're not struggling at all.
We're not struggling.
We're fine.
I need my chair to stop falling down.
The world around you is crumbling.
Just turning to ash actively. So a quote I got from Britannica.com said, the Cold War, quote, waged on political, economic, and propaganda fronts and had only limited recourse to weapons. Why it's called a Cold War, because there wasn't active combat between the two powers. There were violence. There were violent issues that happened. There were wars that happened within the Cold War, but it wasn't the U.S. on a battlefront against the Soviet Union. More clandestine operations.
Yeah.
So, again, this started after World War II. There was a very tenuous alliance with the U.S. and the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union. And because the Soviet Union, after World War II, was like, hey, we kind of like coming in and to Europe and taking Germany's property. So the U.S. and UK were worried that the Soviet Union would invade, take over Eastern Europe, and encroach on Western Europe and eventually the world. Mm-hmm. The Soviet Union wanted to maintain control over Eastern Europe that they had taken largely from Germany to defend against any retaliation from Germany, and eventually spread communism everywhere. That was their eventual goal.
Right.
So it became official, written down official 1947, 1948, and it peaked between 1948 and 1953. The Soviets attempted to blockade West Berlin between 1948 and 1949. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was formed to resist the Soviets in Europe, and 1949 was a big year. That year, the Soviets also detonated their first atomic warhead. The Communist Party of China came into power. And in 1950, the Soviets backed North Korea, which then invaded South Korea. That was backed by the United States, and that started the Korean War, which then ended in a stalemate in 1953. So lots of stuff happening.
Right.
Tensions did relax between 1953 and 1958 after Joseph Stalin died. But tensions did remain, and between 1958 and 1962, there was an arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union to build as many missiles and nuclear weapons as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So like I said, the big players in the Cold War, and specifically in the Cuban Missile Crisis, on the Soviet Union's behalf, we have Nikita Khrushchev. He became premier of the Soviet Union after Joseph Stalin died in 1953. He had a very long history in Soviet politics. He actually fought in the Russian Revolution and started getting into politics after that. And he stayed the premier until like the 60s, I think, before political machinations ousted him out. And he was like, can I please retire and live out the rest of my life in peace? And they're like, yeah, sure, get out of here.
What a kind request, honestly.
I know.
I know I've been like fucking about for a while, but like, can I go chill on a beach? And they're like, just leave, sure. Like,
yeah, really. And then I'm not going to go into detail on the United States. Primarily, it was John F. Kennedy. If you want to learn more about John F. Kennedy, Emily covered him in 3 fucking episodes last year. So I'm not
full with tinfoil hat.
Yes.
Minus his affair with Marilyn Monroe, but I did actually eventually get into that in the Marilyn Monroe episode. So
yes,
you got 4 episodes about Kennedy.
Yes, so I'm not going to talk about him in any other extent versus what's in this episode relevant to the Cuban Missile Crisis, because Emily's covered
know by
him
now.
exhaustively. Yes, he was the president. That's all we need to know. My next section is called Cuba and the Soviet Union Become BFFs. So the U.S., Cuba's only 90 miles off the coast of the United States. Very close. So the U.S. had a lot of vested interest in Cuba. A lot of wealthy people went there for a vacation. There was many thriving and viable agricultural exploits. There's a ton of sugar plantations that were owned by American investors. When the U.S. was very involved in Cuba, it was led by right-wing dictator General Fulgencio Batista. He was backed by the U.S. and had very close ties with the U.S. And then a man named Fidel Castro eventually he used guerrilla tactics to eventually overthrow General Batista and declared himself prime minister, took control of the Cuban government January 1st, 1959.
I did not know that he wasn't like elected or put into power. He forced his way into power.
It was a revolution.
Wow. Okay.
So in February of 1960, Cuba was trying to buy oil from the U.S. U.S. said no. So Cuba was like, fine. Went to the Soviet Union. Can we buy oil from you? They're like, yeah, sure. And the U.S. had a lot of there's a lot of U.S. owned refineries in Cuba, and then they refused to process the oil that Cuba bought.
Is this
and then
because, like, why would the United States not sell oil to them? Was it
because they didn't like Castro. They didn't want to form trade relationships with Castro.
Got it. Because they backed the other guy.
Yes.
Other guy got kicked out, and now they were like, you kicked our friend out, fuck you. We're not giving you oil. Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm here.
Among other things. So when the U.S. owned refineries refused to process all the oil, Castro then seized those refineries.
Oh, sure. Well, that would happen.
And then the U.S. issued a trade embargo on Cuba, primarily with sugar and tobacco. I think raised tariffs crazy high, basically ending the trade relationship between Cuba and the U.S. So Cuba was like, hey, Soviet Union, you want to trade? And the Soviet Union was like, hell yeah. So they actually started forming like a pretty close trade relationship. And Khrushchev was like making sure that Cuba had everything they needed, including military supplies, other forms of aid, like everything that Cuba needed. Khrushchev was like, here you go. Because again, like they're like, hey, maybe we can like become buddies and you're really close to the United States and that would be really convenient for us. And then Castro's like, yeah.
Honestly, oversight on the Americans.
Yeah.
Complete oversight. Like,
yeah.
They're your neighbors.
Castro tried to form trade relationships with the U.S. and the U.S. told him to fuck off. So he was like, okay.
Fine. I'll fuck off to your enemy.
It's giving Iceland vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was literally just thinking that because we are in that time period of the Cod Wars. And, you know what? Don't fuck with the little people, meaning the little islands. Don't do that. They're a strong bunch.
And they'll go to the Soviet Union.
They will. They'll bring their big friend over and be like, beat them up.
Yeah, exactly. So Castro was like, thanks, Khrushchev, for like giving me all these things. You know what? Communism sounding like a good idea. So then he declared that Cuba would be a communist country because it was a great idea, apparently, by 1961. And Castro then went and seized all remaining foreign-owned assets in Cuba, including U.S.-owned assets. The president at the time was Dwight D. Eisenhower, who really hated communism.
Yeah. Famously hated communism.
Yes. So all this is happening, and the fact that there was a communist regime 90 miles off U.S. soil royally ticked off Eisenhower. So what he did was he said, hey, CIA, why don't you try to, like, stage a coup eventually?
The CIA was doing some mad fucking shit between, around the 60s, really.
It was just crazy.
Whoa, yeah.
Yes. So he gave them full authorization, like, fuck this guy's shit up.
Wow.
So the CIA's plan was to target Cuban exiles who had fled Cuba after Castro had taken power. Many of them were in Miami, which is like the southernmost point of Florida, 90 miles, so more convenient to get to. They had formed the Frente Revolucionario Democrático, or the FRD, which was an organization against Castro. So the CIA found this group and they're like, yes, they are perfect for our mission. And they eventually recruited about 1,400 Cuban exiles who would be trained by the CIA, given weapons, taught strategies and espionage and, military tactics. And I mean, for a few years, they went off to this little island called Usepa Island, another one off the coast of Florida that was secretly leased by the CIA. The CIA had a $13 million budget and spent all of it training recruits. And they were training pilots, they were training paratroopers. Like, it was a full operation going on.
Wow.
But it's very largely suspected when you recruit 1,400 people, how do you personally vet 1,400 people? So it's suspected there may have been some double agents in the mix.
Ooh, spies. And I hate that they're like spying on us, but it's still cool.
Yeah. I mean, the Cold War is all about espionage and clandestine operations and spies and all that.
Crazy.
So now we're moving into April 1961 to the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Bay of Pigs invasion.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
the-
was
the
literally
song.
going through my head the entire time I was researching this part. And
Yes.
I bring it up because it is important to the Cuban Missile Crisis later on. It kind of sets the foundation for continuing deteriorating relationships between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Now, the Bay of Pigs invasion happened while Kennedy was in office, right?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Because I remember talking about it very briefly
Yeah.
way back when. Okay.
Yes. So he had kind of inherited this mission from Eisenhower after he became
Right.
president. So there were 3 stages to this planned operation. The first was that exiles would infiltrate the Cuban military bases, act as disgruntled pilots, and then would use aircraft to destroy the planes on Cuban soil, and then quote unquote defect to the US. The second step was to come in and bomb the rest of the Cuban aircraft with missiles the morning of the invasion. And the original plan was to board at the port of Trinidad because there was a very large anti-Castro movement there. It was very convenient with supplies. It was very close to the mountains where the exiles could go flee. If they were confronted by the Cuban government, they could seed doubt and unrest and hopefully, in their eyes, lead to a counter-revolution.
Right.
So, like you had mentioned, Kennedy was president now, and as the time got closer and closer to the invasion, he got less and less confident in the success of the mission. And he was absolutely adamant that there could be no ties about this invasion to the United States. He was like, if it's found out that we were behind this coup, this invasion, our ass is on the line. From on the international stage. So he ordered the CIA to change the location of the invasion. So they switched. They had like 4 days to do this.
Oh, shit.
So it was like super last minute. And they changed from Trinidad to the Bay of Pigs.
Okay.
The problem with changing it to Bay of Pigs was Castro was very familiar with that area. He actually fished there all the time. So he knew that land in and out. There were no civilians close by to instigate a revolution or to get supplies from. And the mountains were 50 miles away. So they couldn't just run into the mountains to run away and hide if things went upside down.
Okay, so why did they go for the Bay? Like, what was the like reasoning behind going to Bay of Pigs instead of like the original plan?
I'm pretty sure that Kennedy believed that people were on to them and had like, there was leaked information about going to Trinidad. And so he was like, no, like, because I'm not 100% sure of the logic there, but he was like, if we go to Trinidad, people 100% suspect the U.S. is behind this.
Right.
We have to switch. And the planners at the CIA were like, where else do we go? Here, Bay of Pigs. Seems like that's kind of how it went.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there was any like basis as to why. Like, at least pick a comparable area.
Right.
But it doesn't even seem like they picked a comparable area.
No, not. And the whole thing was a swamp. So it was just not a good landing area, which would probably lead to, as if you know the Bay of Pigs, you know it was not a successful invasion. Spoiler alert. So the first stage, where operatives would pose as disgruntled military officers and destroy ship or aircraft, went off on April 15th. 24 of Castro's 30 aircraft were destroyed.
Okay.
Castro immediately suspected the United States was behind this.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay, I suspect this is plan 1 to something. This is just step 1. Like, there's going to be more attacks. There's going to be something else. So then he goes up and rounds up thousands of potential dissidents and just like puts them away somewhere, like in military hangars and stadiums and theaters. Like he just takes them over here and he puts them somewhere else so they can't be anywhere close to where the insurgents may potentially enter. Like they're all locked up somewhere. So even if they were successful getting to a town, they wouldn't be able to start a counter-revolution.
Right. There's no one to revolt at all.
Exactly.
I mean, at least he didn't like just straight up kill them all, but like,
yeah,
that sucks. Okay.
Yeah. So then Castro ordered his foreign minister, Raul Roa, to call an emergency session of the United Nations Political and Security Committee on like the same day, April 15th, when his aircraft was destroyed. So the United States United Nations ambassador, Adlai Stevenson, he went in front of the committee and he was like, no, the United States is not behind this at all. Like, why would we? And he even showed pictures of like the planes that bombed the aircraft in question. He said, see, like these are Cuban aircraft, not U.S. aircraft. But the plane in the pictures had a metal nose and Cuban planes had a plastic nose.
Oh.
So they're like, not Cuban planes. Stevenson, he's just a UN ambassador. He has no idea there's some clandestine operation going on. Because why would he? So he is pissed the fuck off that the U.S. may be behind this attack on Cuban soil. He's like, what the hell? So he's pissed. April 16th, the U.S.'s involvement in the situation is starting to become more apparent. And now Kennedy's panicking. He's like, no, like everyone's going to know we're behind this. It can't because it'll ruin our reputation. He just became president because he was elected in 1960, right?
I believe so, yes.
So he is within his first half of the term and he's like, the United Nations is on to us. And if we do our second strike like we planned to destroy the rest of it, it'll confirm to everyone else that the United States is behind it. And then like the entire world is going to look at us like you guys are invading a foreign country as a member of the United Nations.
Stop while you're ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he cancels the second airstrike that is set to destroy the rest of Castro's aircraft. Literally, the planes were on the runway about to go. And they got the last minute cancel order.
Wow.
That is how last minute it was.
How bad would it have been had they actually gone?
It may have been a successful invasion. Probably would not have looked good. But I did get this from the CIA website. They detailed every step pretty in detail. Yeah. And they did say that this very, very likely affected the success of the invasion because there's still 6 remaining aircraft for Castro, and the planes were also going to go ahead and start sending the exiles in to like do reconnaissance and like go ahead and like prepare. But because this was all canceled, and it takes a little while to get there by plane and by boat and stuff. So it just kind of knocked everything off course. Right. So April 17th, the invasion begins. And the Cuban military is prepared. Again, Castro knew something was up. He said there's going to be a big something happening, so they were prepared. The invading force that were on ships got caught along the reefs.
Oh, no.
And they ended up losing a bunch of weapons as they were coming in. And the Cuban forces outnumbered the exiles. There was only about 1,400 exiles on this mission. And I think there was like 10,000 Cuban soldiers ready to counter.
Wow.
And they had 6 planes that had not been destroyed that were attacking the exiles, shooting them, dropping ordnance on them. It was a complete shit show. And then the exiles were like, please help us. And Kennedy was like,
can't.
We will provide air support for 1 hour, but they can only drop off supplies.
What?
Yeah. They cannot engage in the conflict, and they cannot have any, like, troop action.
So he sent 1,400 people to die.
Essentially. The situation completely deteriorated. The BBC said all of the exiles were, quote, captured or killed. And then I saw in another source that 75% of the exiles were imprisoned.
Oh my God.
So it was like over 1,000. I think it was like about 1,100 Cuban exiles were imprisoned, and I assume the rest died. Because there were some that escaped, but they had no supplies, so they ended up having to surrender if they lived long enough to surrender. Yeah, it was a complete shit show. And this really hurt Kennedy's reputation.
Yeah, I would say so.
He came off across as fickle, cowardly, and hot-headed. Impulsive, he's going to back out. Like, any kind of negative attribution was thrown at him. So, while this is going on, the U.S. has missiles in Turkey pointed at the Soviet Union. Just in case. And Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union, was like, let's do the same thing. Let's put a bunch of missiles in Cuba so we can also have,
Right.
We're right in the U.S.'s backyard. And this is another communist regime. So Khrushchev negotiated with Fidel Castro to put Soviet missiles in Cuba in July of 1961, I believe. So very shortly after the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Oh, yeah. Castro is like pissed. He's primed. He's like, yes, please. Put them here.
Fuck the U.S. Give me those missiles. And he saw it as putting missiles in Cuba as evening the playing field because they have missiles targeted at them. Why not have missiles targeted at the U.S.? So
I can see the mentality, yes.
Right. The Soviet Union and Cuba were like, this is a defense strategy. Because who's to say that the U.S. won't try to invade again? Or invade the Soviet Union? This is for our protection. So now we're going to get into the missile crisis. The moment we've all been waiting for.
Yes.
On September 4th, Kennedy warned the Soviet Union about bringing weapons into Cuba, but the Soviets ignored him. Arms included Soviet IL-28 bombers, which I assume are missiles. Skipping forward to October 14th, there's a American spy plane, a U-2, who is piloted by Major Richard Hazer, flying over Cuba doing surveillance. And he took pictures of Soviet missile silos being constructed.
Okay.
And he sent that to his superiors, and McGeorge Bundy, who is a national security advisor, notified Kennedy about the missiles in Cuba. And based on the progress of the missile sites, they suspected they would be ready to fire within a week.
Damn.
And they also found a fleet of Soviet ships carrying missiles into Cuba. So they were like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Kennedy gathers his closest advisors to form I believe it's the Executive Commission. I think Eisenhower was on it too. And I think Lyndon B. Johnson, all those people. So there's a few choices that Kennedy has how he can move forward. A few options. Some of his advisors advised him to just ignore the situation, just pretend it's not happening. Others suggested give a warning. Don't you put missiles in Cuba.
Well, they didn't listen before.
Right. Probably not effective. His Joint Chiefs of Staff suggested to airstrike the missile sites and invade Cuba.
Oh, that's a little extreme. Okay.
Kennedy chose to form, it's technically a blockade. The legally distinct term they used was quarantine. Because a blockade implies war.
Okay.
And this was a quarantine to prevent more missiles coming into Cuba. So the U.S. Navy forms this quarantine barrier around Cuba to prevent more Soviet ships. Kennedy sends a letter to Nikita Khrushchev saying they would not tolerate missiles being so close to the United States, to dismantle the bases and return all missiles to the Soviet Union. that same day, he went on television to update the American public that missiles were in Cuba being supplied by the Soviet Union, and what could happen if the situation deteriorated.
Okay.
So this is a quote from his speech. Quote, "It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union."
Okay.
So if any missile launches from Cuba and hits any country in the Western Hemisphere, that is going to be considered an attack on the United States by the Soviet Union, and we will go to war.
And we will hit our button and send our missiles to them.
Yeah.
Everyone's just trigger happy. They're just ready.
They're like, dare me, dare me, dare me. And the U.S. military enters DEFCON 3 status, which is like the defense readiness stuff. Level 3 is in the middle. Khrushchev responded that this blockade was an act of aggression and they would not be stopped. But there were some ships from the Soviet Union that did not go through the quarantine line. They saw the blockade and are like, nah.
JK.
No, yeah. Aerial surveillance found that the Soviets had not stopped constructing the missile bases, and the U.S. military went to DEFCON 2 status. Which is like...
1 is the worst.
Yes. 1 is nuclear war.
Oh, jeez.
So they're in 2. So they're like actively preparing to go to war at this point. And it seemed neither side was going to back down, but Kennedy continued to seek out a diplomatic resolution. Because he didn't want to go to war, but he was willing to if needed.
Yes.
So we're on October 26th. ABC correspondent John Scully was contacted by a Soviet agent who had said that there could be negotiations had. And the Soviet Union would remove the missiles if the U.S. promised not to invade Cuba. Scully told the White House, and then they moved to verify.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Kennedy received a letter that night from Khrushchev, who had said that if they continued down this path, the only resolution would be mutually assured destruction. This is a quote from... He's not wrong. This is a quote from Khrushchev's letter. "If there's no intention to doom the world to the catastrophe of thermonuclear war, then let us not only relax the forces pulling on the ends of the rope, let us take measures to untie that knot. We are ready for this."
Wow.
So Khrushchev is like, and apparently this was like a very long emotional letter, and he said, "I don't want to start a nuclear war. That's not my intention."
Like he's giving like a very level-headed person.
He was not.
Okay. He's presenting it very well.
Khrushchev, he's a very... I read a book about him a long time ago called K Blows Top. He was slightly better than Stalin, as in, like, he didn't commit, like, active genocides like Stalin did. I think he tried to be level-headed, but he was also a very emotional person who would let his temper get the best of him. So I think he realized the stakes of the situation. So the next day, Kennedy receives a letter on October 27th, receives a letter from Khrushchev saying that their deal would only go through if the U.S. also took their missiles out of Turkey.
Okay.
That same day, a U-2 recon jet was shot down over Cuba. The pilot, the pilot was Major Rudolph Anderson, and he's considered the only U.S. combat casualty of the missile crisis. Not great.
I hate that. Not great. I hate that. I am glad it was... That's it. Because it could have been so much worse.
It could have been a lot worse. So the U.S. Armed Forces are continuing to prepare for war while Kennedy is continuing to work with his advisors. It seems like he was recommended to do this next steps. He responded to the first letter, but ignored the second one. He reached out to Khrushchev and offered steps for the Soviets to remove their missiles while supervised by the United Nations and promised the U.S. would not invade Cuba publicly.
Okay.
While Kennedy outwardly ignored the second message, Attorney General Robert Kennedy met with the USSR ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Dobrynin, and told him the U.S. was planning to remove the missiles from Turkey anyway, but they couldn't make this public.
Okay. So they're like, hey, we are gonna take them, but like, don't tell everyone else that. We'll take them though.
Yes.
Got it.
Exactly. Very sneaky.
Yeah.
So on October 28th, Khrushchev publicly declared the Soviet missiles would be removed from Cuba.
Okay.
The quarantine around Cuba continued until November 20th, 1962, when all missiles had finally been removed, and then the U.S. removed the missiles in Turkey in April of 1963.
So how long were the missiles there?
The crisis lasted 13 days. I think the missiles had probably been there prior, but they weren't identified until October 14th when that spy plane was going over Cuba.
Why did I think that this thing lasted years? Why did I think that this went on for so long?
It was 13 days.
2 weeks?
Not even.
Oh my God.
October 14th to October 27th.
Wow. I was like, man, these dates are really feeling awfully close.
Yeah.
It's because they are.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I had no idea. I also thought it was like, because I think I just confused it for the Cold War in general, which did last 50 years.
Yeah. I thought, the Cuban Missile Crisis was like this tiny little, like a part of the Cold War. And I don't even think in my head that the Cold War lasted 50 years. Like in my head, it was probably like 5. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just thought that almost that they kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah.
Not that this was like a teeny tiny little sliver in the Cold War era.
Yeah. And that it also is weird that the Bay of Pigs invasion happened about a year and a half before the crisis, and it seems like not a lot of time at all, and also so much time,
Yes. Especially for the crisis it's like a delayed reaction that happened very quickly.
Yeah. But again, like the reason it happened is because the U.S. got information from a spy plane that they were building these missile sites. If it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have known until they were completed.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure it was 1961 when Khrushchev approached Castro and said, hey, let's put missiles on Cuba.
Yeah.
So for the next year, they were working on that, I assume.
Yeah, in secret, incognito.
Yes. But just because the Soviets got all the missiles out of Cuba doesn't mean they stopped. And then their focus became building nuclear warheads that could reach the U.S. from Soviet soil.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Because the arms race must continue.
Of course.
So my next section is called Fallout, which I thought was kind of a funny pun. Not really funny. So, like I said, while the Soviets removed their missiles from Cuba, they did not stop building weapons of mass destruction. Some of the consequences were both sides thought that they had won. Khrushchev saved communist Cuba from U.S. invasion, removed the missiles from Turkey, while Kennedy made his administration look strong by standing up to the Soviets, the communists, removing the missiles from Cuba.
Right.
And this helped bolster Kennedy's image of political and military strength around the world.
Right.
Another consequence is that because of all the emotions that were very tense, a direct phone line was installed between the White House and the Kremlin called the hotline. So if anything like this ever happened again, Kennedy and Khrushchev, or whoever was in charge, the president and the premier, could call each other on the phone and say, hey, let's not...
Get off your bullshit.
Yes, basically. Because they had to rely on letters up to that point. Or telegrams or whatever. The Soviet Union and the United States were like, hey, nuclear weapons are really scary and it shouldn't happen again. And they eventually took steps to eventually push a nuclear test ban treaty. And that was signed on July 25th, 1963, which ended the testing of nuclear weapons. Didn't end the building of them, but ended the testing of them.
Okay.
And in the 1960s, strategic arms limitation talks, or SALT, also began. I think there was 2 different talks over the next decade or so. I think there was one in the 70s. And at the very first SALT meeting, both parties, or all parties, agreed to cease constructing intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs.
Wow.
And that's the Cuban Missile Crisis.
They just agreed to stop?
Yeah, like, kind of like, fingers crossed. Yes, we'll stop. Which it did. I mean, you have the Korean War, then you have the space race, then you have the Vietnam War, and then all the conflict happening in Germany. And then the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, which ended the Cold War. Because there was no longer a Soviet Union.
That is crazy that that's the only thing that stopped the Cold War.
Yeah. There's a lot. I was reading through like what all happened, and I was like, wow, this is a lot that I'm not going to talk about for today because it's super off topic, but
yeah, I feel like the Cold War would probably end up being another 2 to 3 episode.
Oh yeah.
Topic.
Oh gosh, I can't imagine like 50 years of all these different missions, and again all the individual wars that happened within the Cold War, like backed by the 2 global superpowers.
Crazy. Yeah, this is wow. I'm enlightened. I am shooketh. 13 days, and it all ended with fingers crossed. We promise we won't point our guns at each other anymore.
But we're still going to build the bullets.
Yeah. The stockpile's behind me. I just won't point it at them anymore.
And I won't fire because if you shoot me, or if I shoot you, then you'll shoot me and the entire world will die.
Yeah, I mean, mutually assured destruction. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
Which is such a famous line now.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. For enlightening me about so many things. Fidel... Khrushchev? I don't know how to say it. Khrushchev. Wow.
I think both of them could potentially be topics as well. I've heard about Castro, but I don't really know a lot about him. I mean, he died recently.
Yeah, he lived a long time. He was he still in power when he died?
I'm not sure.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
He was Prime Minister of Cuba from 1959 to 1976, and then President from 76 to 2008. So he was in power from 59 until 2008.
And he died in his 90s.
He died 8 years later. Yes.
Because he was like born in 1926. And then died in 2016, which is insane.
Also, this is one of the most badass pictures I've ever seen, and I don't know how to explain that.
With the cigar.
He's like smoking a cigar, and that doesn't mean I agree with I don't even know what he says. I don't know much about him. Mm-hmm. But that picture looks badass.
There's a couple of him with his cigar.
Crazy.
There's also one of him and like there's so many of him wearing his like fatigues, his military uniform, and then there's one of him in like a tracksuit when he's old. It's very jarring to see.
It is. It's like he took off the fatigues and was like, all right, I
Time
can
to be
rest now."
comfy. And Khrushchev died in like the 70s. He died in like 71. So it wasn't long after this.
Yeah, jeez.
Well, and we know what happened with JFK.
Yeah, well, if you don't, we've got a whole 3-part episode.
We do. Emily covered him for 3 episodes, almost the entire month of May last year.
Oh, it was the most depressing May, because that's when we covered the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire and JFK dying.
Yeah. And all the conspiracies that happened after it.
Yes.
Again, full tinfoil hat.
I did. I made one, and I am honestly really proud of myself that I didn't give it away beforehand, because I did just like pop my... I wish we need to start recording these, because the shit that happens. Anyway,
Let's do socials.
yeah. So if you like this, you can find us on Facebook,
Ill-Equipped History podcast group and page.
TikTok,
At Ill-Equipped History.
Instagram,
At Ill-Equipped History.
Gmail,
Ill-Equippedhistory at gmail.com.
and Patreon.
Patreon.com/Ill-Equippedhistory, where for $5 a month, you can get stickers and bonus
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to think of like a sign off. Really, all that's coming to me is don't invade other countries.
And don't go to nuclear war.
Yeah, because honestly, the only good thing that's ever come out of invading other countries is nothing. So never in the history of ever has it been like, this is all sunshine and rainbows and this is great. World War I was because of an annexed country.
Yeah.
And Ferdinand getting shot because of the annexed country.
Yeah.
So obviously leave each other alone. And we've said it again and we'll say it until we, I guess, die. Leave each other alone.
Yeah, just leave each other alone.
Yeah, mind your, as my daughter says now, mind your own beeswax. I try to say business. I do. She corrects me. She says, "You mean beeswax?" I'm like, "I do mean beeswax. You're right."
Oh. I love her.
I do too. She's the best.
Okay, bye.